Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Smarter Working Live. My name is Stuart Watts. I work in the Workplace Experience team in the Government Property Agency, and it's my pleasure to be hosting this first webinar of today as part of the Smarter Working Live package of webinars that we're delivering. This is a precursor to our conference that is being hosted next week on the 1st of March. So if you have some time next week, then please feel free to come and join us on at that event. You can head over to smarterworkinglive.com to sign up for that event. But I have got the pleasure of hosting a conversation today on creating a great place to work. And I've got some fantastic colleagues joining me in this session that have been involved in designing the workplace, but also helping their colleagues with embedding great behaviours and delivering a really great workplace experience. So the format of this session today is going to be really informal. Think of it as a little fireside chat, cozy little networking session that you can eardrop into and hear all the pearls of wisdom that from the colleagues that are absolute powerhouses in this forum. But we will enable you to contribute. We do want to hear your comments and feedback. So we will be requesting feedback at the end, but asking you to pose any questions that you've got to the panel specifically. That are of interest to you, that are challenges that you might be facing, so that we can tease a little bit out of their growing brains around this kind of area. So it's going to be very informal and very relaxed. So feel free to post in your questions. We may not get to them all, I'm afraid, but those that we don't get to, we'll be able to come back to you later on after the session via our multi-user email address. So let me start kicking off by introducing the panel for you. So we've got Aiden Kearney joining us. He's the head of design in Workplace Services Directorate in the GPA, and he's been working with lots of our clients and designing the workspaces to suit their needs. We've got Charlotte Duncan, who is a workplace design manager in GPA. She's looking at the design of our government hubs and also looks at the GPA Workplace Design Guide, and we've got more on this a bit later. We've got Pam Roberts, who's head of customer support services in the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, which is part of the Ministry of Defence. And she's also one of the Smarter Working leads at DIO. And they have received a massive achievement recently by being awarded Smarter Working Maturity. And our final member, leaving the best till last, leaving Dave till last, let's put it that way. We've got Dave Wayman from GCHQ. He's really involved in creating a great place to work for his colleagues and is leading the embedding smarter working in his organisation. So I'm going to start kicking things off with a bit of an intro question for you, Aiden, and recognising that obviously the pandemic had quite a significant impact on the workplace. And I was just wondering if you've got any insights around any workplace trends and themes that you're seeing clients ask for as a result of the impact of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think we can all see there's a massive cultural shift happening in the workplace at the moment. And I think what we're trying to do now, and the challenge is trying to figure out how to apply this change from a workplace design perspective. Some of the trends and themes I see coming into my inbox every day from clients, just to list a few, the big thing now at the moment for a lot of our clients is occupancy rates. Before the pandemic, we were sort of having to argue, to sort of get them down to 8 to 10 desk ratio. We're at 100%. Now we're looking at 5 to 10, or even 3 or 2 to 10 desk ratio. So that's a massive shift since the pandemic, and that's really helping us sort of sell the sort of smarter working principles as well. I think clients are much more aware that their space needs to work much harder for them. It needs to be more flexible and adaptable. And it needs to be future-proof so it can change and flex to the business needs. And I think, we're seeing a massive demand for, more enclosed cellular pods or smaller video conference rooms. So that's quite interesting to see that we're sort of going full 360 back into the sort of cellular office environment for part of the day to react to the agile working. I think there's definitely a much greater understanding and appreciation from clients since the pandemic in regards to like a holistic approach to design, and I mean well-being, acoustic, air quality, etc. These are high up on the agenda now, and that's fantastic to see. And I think the next sort of big area that I think, you know, will be something that we really need to work in and to develop is personalization. Clients that we're working on in workplace services, they're asking for a lot more sort of identity within their workplace. It's becoming more residential, warmer, more colorful, with a much richer materiality palette. And this is really important for the emerging workforce, Gen Z and Gen A, to have this sort of identity within their workplace. So they're sort of the main sort of trends that I can think of. I think the GPA workplace design strategy is not something that's static. It's always always changing, and it's reflecting these themes and trends that are emerging. We just need to make sure that there's enough flexibility in our strategy to react and respond to the client requirements and the emerging workplace trends that we're beginning to see.
Brill, fab. And actually, it links in quite nicely to a question I've got for Charlotte, is because obviously we're looking at, as the strategy evolves, I suppose, the workplace design guide needs to keep pace with that and make sure that that is evolving as well. So how are you doing that, and what are you seeing? How's that approach being taken forward, Charlotte?
So the workplace design guide, it's never going to be a static document. Obviously, it's out there in the public. Anyone can access it, which is fantastic. It means that it's not just impacts GPA projects, but it has wider impact on projects with departments who aren't on board with the GPA, also have influence on local authority and in the private sector. And it is forever evolving, and the key things that it has to adapt to is we do regularly update it in response to customer insights. So to do this, we partner with Leesman. They're obviously a world leader in measuring workplace and employee experience. And we commission Leesman surveys of our building. So this provides us that insight into everything from inclusive design considerations, interoperability, and how users use all of the different work settings that are within our workplace design guide. All of this information then feeds into the development of the next iterations of our guides. So, for example, as Aiden mentioned previously, we're seeing lots more user requests for smaller spaces for private virtual calls, Teams calls, which again, these can be achieved by the one-person kind of telephone booths, we like to call them. So we're looking at how we then incorporate that within our design guide. In addition to all of the feedback that we get from users, we also need to make sure that we're responding to emerging guidance. So currently at the moment, one thing that I'm looking at is updating our guidance with regards to toilet provision. So within our current workplace design guide, we have non-gendered universal toilets, but actually following a ministerial statement that was released last year and emerging guidance, we're looking at still protecting that provision of some gendered toilets as well. That's important to lots of people. In addition to this, we look at emerging standards that are coming from the BSI and other institutions. So another key one that I'm looking at the moment is one of the new BSs on menstruation, menopause in the workplace. That's just been out for public consultation. So we're going to be looking at how we address that within our guides. So our guides, they're never static. They will continue to evolve in response to kind of user feedback, the guides that are coming out that are new. And also those themes that Aiden just pulled out there that we're starting to see in terms of workplace design.
Brilliant. And actually, it's a good opportunity for me to bring Pam in now, because Pam, I know you've been doing lots of work to transform your estate. So how have you been sort of applying some of these or designing your great places to work within the Defence Infrastructure Organisation? And have you been embedding the behavioural change that sits alongside that as well?
Okay, yeah. Good morning, Stuart, and good morning, everybody out there. Yes, excuse me, we've implemented smarter working across 17 of our key hub sites, but this main one here, our head office in Lichfield in Staffordshire, we've managed to implement full activity-based working. Now, how we do that, we follow, almost a programmatic and change combined approach. So we start with who are the impacted populations out there, the people who are going to be directly impacted by this change, these new ways of working. So that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody out there. But the reason we do that up front, Stuart, is because from there we can identify our smarter working ambassador network. And that's crucial, because that smarter working ambassador network are the focal points between those impacted populations on the ground and you and your program team actually delivering that design. So we have this, you know, ethos of co-creation, so that the communication, the engagement, that relationship and trust building that we have with the business is all through the smarter working ambassador network. They are the key people on the ground. They know how they work now and how they're going to work in the future. So what do we do then when we've got that network? So then we create floor plate designs around the as is, how they're working now. And then we work with those smarter working ambassadors and their teams through an iteration of workshops to look at the activities that they undertake and how does that meet with the design guide full activity-based working, or what we commonly call the 4 C's. You know, the activities that you carry out: concentrate, collaborate, connect, create. So we can overlay a template on top of the as is to get us to the to be. And through a series of iterative workshops, we'll work through that, sometimes on 5 different occasions, constantly tweaking to get it to the business's, you know, nearest amateur swearing. It really, really matches how they operate in their individual functional business areas. And because we've put a lot of effort into relationship and trust building, that spirit of co-creation is the thread, the golden thread that goes all the way through from start to finish. It's also very important to have a RACI document. I'm sure you're familiar with that, but if you're not, responsible, accountable, consulted and informed, because your key stakeholders, the people that you need to secure that buy-in, if you do that work upfront, it pays dividends down the line as changes and continuous improvement come in. So that's how we do our design. In terms of how do we embed, then I want to pick up on that, you know, that co-creation theme that we talked about and the Smarter Working Ambassadors Network. We stay engaged throughout the whole process, and we create a forum called the Smarter Working Change Support Group. And that is a very specific group of key SMEs across the organisation. So, for example, your people and HR team, your health and safety experts, your diversity and inclusion networks, particularly disability and faith and belief, playing to what Charlotte was saying about the design guide. All these individual characteristics need to be accommodated within the building. We bring in the trade unions, the corporate comms team, the change team itself, and also our IT experts. And we meet with a regular drumbeat every 4 weeks. Every product, every document goes through that group for their endorsement. Once you have secured that, Stuart, I can tell you your path is much easier to follow, because they will be your advocates in the organisation. And we think that's what success looks like. So if the one thing I would leave the target audience with today is a smarter working change support group of key SMEs from across the organisation, bringing their skills and knowledge to the table, there's nothing finer in helping you on that journey to embed, you know, to successfully implement, adopt and embed smarter working in the workplace.
That sounds like a fantastic end-to-end process, which probably makes it even easier to transition things into business as usual, because you've got that kind of level of ownership. I'll just bring Dave in now, actually, because Dave, you work in a very special area of government in GCHQ, and so you obviously have potentially a different set of requirements. So how have you been able to inform your work environment to support people to be able to deliver within GCHQ what they need to be able to deliver?
I think Stuart and folks, it's a long journey actually, and I was just thinking as Aiden was talking about hubs and the idea of working together. I led well, if I go back to the beginning, in 2000 we had the opportunity to merge 2 old-fashioned sites in Cheltenham into one, which was what we call the new accommodation project. And at those days it was very much open plan. We got rid of all the directors' offices, so we had a little row of directors which all sat in a little in one of the bridge on one of the levels. They were all then actually distributed across the organisation, so there was no major offices. Our DGs have a desk which is probably not much bigger than 4 tables together, and they just share that space. So that's really quite unusual. And that's when we first did it, and it was all very corporate. And it's funny, Aiden, you were talking about the generation Z and Y, and actually how we're moving from that and starting to introduce much more colour and material into the building. And Charlotte, you mentioned about the hubs for doing flexible working. We've created a lot of those places where you can actually sit down and you run your laptop and put the screen on and put a camera on and do it in an enclosed space. And that's one of the things for us in our secure environment, which is a bit tricky. So, you know, most organizations run official. we run at top secret. So we have to balance those two bits of the organisation together. So the way we do that are basically try and create spaces where you can do that particular work. We allow staff to take laptops in. So the work desk has two screens, which are what you might call your top secret classified system. And then you have another screen. And we were just talking earlier about how useful it is to have another screen where you connect the laptop to it. So we actually can do that at the desktop. We've also, I think underneath that, we've got a whole undercarriage of services that have been developed over the last 4 or 5 years, allowing you to transfer documents from what we call official to classified systems really easily. So booking buses, booking meeting rooms can all be done on both systems. Does lead to a little bit of complete confusion with folks about which systems they use, but we've put all that undercarriage in place. So I think for me, that's sort of how we're tackling that, but it's all about education. And I think in many respects, COVID was a great driver for us because it forced everyone. And I think in the comments Melissa mentions we're at home. It is half-term week this week, so a lot of people are at home. But generally, I work a couple of days in the office, 3 days in the office and a couple of days at home. But we have our team. We've got somebody that lives in Scotland and works remotely from Scotland, and somebody else down in Cornwall. And we've moved from what might have been a Cheltenham-centric location to a 3-hub model, where actually we've got locations in London, Manchester, and Cheltenham. And so trying to design spaces that can accommodate both secret and official in those is quite tricky. And what we've done in Manchester, for example, is have one floor which is what we call a classified working area. And you can still take laptops in and use them there. But then we have another floor, which is a whole official sensitive working space. So you can bring external visitors in, you can have conference calls in the open. So that's actually how we're tackling it. And it's not all one solution fits all. It's actually different solutions for actually different sites. And what we find in Manchester is that the audience there wants something slightly different. It's a city centre location. Cheltenham is slightly, it's our sort of base, and London again is another location. But we're moving to that model of split levels with a mixture of classified with all the security bits in one level, and then the official working at the other for those that want to just move between the two. That was helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting actually, Dave, because I think when we think about the designs of floor plates, we've tended to zone things for particular reasons. It sounds to me like you're having to zone things depending on the security requirements. And I suppose there is an element of personalization there where people knowing what they're doing or the work activities they're carrying out at the time, where they would go to. And I just wanted to come back to one of the points I think Aiden mentioned about potentially one of the challenges for the future. So I was going to open this up for a wider discussion around that personalization of the spaces. Everybody's going to come in with their own wants and needs. And how do you balance those wants and needs when it comes to designing a workplace? Because you're not going to necessarily please everybody. So has anybody got any thoughts around some of those challenges? Come on, Pam. Is it Pam? Sorry, I can't see.
Okay, yes, Stuart, certainly. I referred in my earlier comments around the 4 C's, activity-based working. So concentrate, collaborate, connect, and create. So we have zoned our building, the building that we're in now. You can see some wall art on the back, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We have zoned that building to enable different activities to take place. So building on a comment you just heard from Dave there, we actually have a couple of mantras here. One of them is work's an activity, not a place. So we encourage our people here in DIO to think about the activity that they're going to be carrying out. And that is driven by what's in your calendar and Outlook. Who are you seeing this week? Who are you talking to? What are the activities you need to carry out? Do you need to be on site? Can you work from home? Do you need to go to visit a site office to talk to a contractor? Are you on a training course? So we encourage our people to think ahead about the activities they need to carry out. If they need to concentrate, and concentrate, we believe, is an activity where 80% of your time is traditionally that activity is carried out at home. Because it could be, a business case or an options paper, a very complex spreadsheet that needs to be completed, a forecast of outturn for the end of the financial year. We see almost 80% more of that activity being carried out at home. So in our office, we have very few concentrate spaces. And in actual fact, since we opened in October 2021, we've reduced even further the number of concentrate spaces we've got here because we found that Collaborate is much more used by staff. Collaborate coming in, meetings, both informal meetings, formal meetings. So informal on the work on the floor plate, more formal in enclosed meeting pods where you might have to, you know, perhaps you're doing disciplinaries or promoting, you know, connect spaces, either connecting into the IT or connecting with colleagues and networking. So social spaces, Dave referred to some of those. Plug and play, you can sit down, they're social spaces, but they have, you know, plug and play for the laptop. They also have chargers for your phone. And we've got those throughout the building. And on the top floor of this building, we've got our Create space. And before I talk to you about Create, I just want to talk about colours, because our spaces are colour coded according to the psychology based on generation X, Y, Z. And you heard Aiden talk about that. So, we have, pinks and purples in collaborate spaces. We have blue where it's quiet and we want to focus and concentrate. We have green, which is very nature and social. And we have red, top floor red, very vibrant red, orange, gold, yellow. Create stimulates innovation, it's energy, it's planning. So the whole top floor is given over to what we call the innovation hub. And you go up there when you're planning ahead, and you know, lots of sticky things and brown paper, you can write ideas down. It's where the juices are flowing. We find that it's working. But it's as Charlotte said in the design guide, it's iterative. So we are learning that we don't need as much concentrate space in the office. People are doing that elsewhere. So that's how we're listening and learning as it evolves. And again, lots of biophilia, lots of natural light, lots of plants, a well-being garden out the front. People feel that, you know, the transition between home and work and the garden is almost seamless.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, Pam, actually. I was just thinking about, we've got innovation hubs, which have very much got that vibrant, you can sort of do what you want to, everything's all at hand, they're fully supported and resourced. We did used to have them in the main building, but actually we found that people wanted to go away to be innovative, and they can be innovative in the space, but actually creating an area that they can do that in. And I think actually they're going to be an innovation park built on the west of Cheltenham fairly soon, just for that reason, where we're going to have all the suppliers and all the organisations together on that. The other thing we're doing, of course, in HQ, we've got a whole neurodiverse workforce. So what we're actually trying to do is bring the level of our workspace up a bit. So rather than having, because if you're, you know, you might want to concentrate at your desk, it's actually how do we make the noise environment just a bit better for those individuals in those spaces. So we don't want them to get up and move to somewhere else. Actually, can we design it so that they can actually still work there and carry on doing the job? And that's a lot of feedback we're getting from folks about, especially our neurodiverse group, is that, you know, like, don't sit by a door which opens every 5 minutes, because if you're dyspraxic, you just jump. So it just distracts you. So it's thinking, and that's what we've been trying to do, think more carefully about how we design our workspaces and the layout of them, so that it suits the whole mix of minds and diverse population that we've got.
I would say, Stuart, just going back to personalization, it's a fine balance, because if you put it out there to the customers on the ground, everyone has a different favorite color. So I think, it's really interesting what Pam's saying about, we can leave that bit to the interior designer to pick the colors for the different activities, because we know these colors have different emotions and feelings, like Pam was explaining. But I think, can go down to, the layering up of a particular space, sort of local artifacts, which you can really get in the clients on the ground involved in choosing them, and sort of local artwork, and all these, abstract artwork, not just, pictures of the town that they can see outside that will fade in the sun. Really, think about it, and fabrics as well, having a local sort of client materiality palette that they can apply to different locations, but also have that sort of local element. We find that really successful with some of our clients who are working across the country.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on that point, Aiden, if I may. I didn't mention, I said this backdrop that you can see behind me, as part of the co-creation piece, we did a photo competition, and the winner was able to choose the name of the building that we're in. And then we asked them to suggest names for the meeting rooms. And by a huge majority, the whole of DIO elected to name the meeting rooms after the countries around the world that we support. So we've got Canada, the Falklands, Cyprus, Gibraltar. I'm in Nepal, and this is wall art. It reflects the jungle in Nepal. So that that sense of belonging and purpose and the role that we have. Defence Infrastructure Organisation, which is the estates arm of the Ministry of Defence, supporting the armed forces to live, work, train and deploy. So our staff feel that when they first walk into the building. Very good point. Thank you for drawing my attention to that one, Aiden, so I could make that point. Thank you.
I need to get a tour. I need to see these arts. You'll have to bring me on a tour someday, Pam.
Will do. Will do. You're very welcome. Yeah, very welcome.
Just going to say, it's quite fascinating actually to hear, not being a designer myself, but understanding all the tools and techniques that you've got in your armory to really make it feel like a comfortable place for people to come and interact with. I suppose we have to kind of recognise not everybody's got the luxury of maybe some budget to invest in this kind of thing. And are there any sort of, and I'm posing this maybe to more Aiden and Charlotte, are there any like design techniques that you think could be applied for those people that don't really have a lot of money, but just want to start repurposing some existing estate or just make it look different? Is there any things that can make it really impactful and create that great place for people that don't really necessarily have a big capital project that sits behind it?
Yeah, I think touching on, again, what Dave, Pam and Aiden have all been saying, a key thing for me in terms of design is providing choice. So providing choice in the work settings, in the furniture. We're all different. We all have different needs, and our offices have to support that. And that ties back to inclusive design, which again is that foundation to all of our design guides. So we need to make sure our workplaces work for everyone. So just some really simple ideas of how we adopt this. We have, in meeting rooms, we make sure that we have chairs, some with arms, some without arms. I'm sure all of you have a different preference as to which one you prefer and to sit at. Some people need it to get out of a chair. Some people don't like it to constrain them. Ensuring that we have, a minimum of 50% height adjustable desks. Again, that allows for people of different heights. Also, it's really great at encouraging people to stand up, get up off their seat and not be static in the workplace. Again, making sure that we're providing for different kind of genders, races, religions. So providing reflection rooms, ritual washing facilities, which can be used for prayer or meditation of any faith, not making it specific. And again, how Dave kind of touched on, and Pamela, we have the areas which are more collaborative, which can be noisy, which suits some people really well. And then focus, do not disturb spaces for those that, might not be able to focus in that noisy environment, that might be neurodiverse. And they're quite simple considerations. And most of them are furniture based, so they're not expensive. It's not about moving walls around, but they can make such a big difference in providing kind of successful workspaces.
I think, Charlotte, the other thing also is it's like, when you're at work, you often can't go out, especially now, so you have to have a range of food that you can have available. So for me, it's actually reflecting that society mix of what food you provide in your workplace. So there's a whole range of food. I think we've got a Greggs, actually. Not everyone can have a Greggs in their office, but the queues in the morning are like 20 meters long to queue for coffees. And that's the other thing, that the way of working slightly changed, because it used to be you sit at a desk and you work. Actually, there's all those serendipitous conversations and people have a coffee and they go and sit down and they go into their booth and they sit down and they have their private chat, or they go into a little conference room and so that's a different way of working than we saw probably 10 or 15 years ago. And we're trying to accommodate our designs around that. So it's not always sitting at the desk, although a lot of our folks do. It's actually getting up and walking around, which is also good for you in terms of fitness.
And could I just ask Aiden? Yeah, sorry, I was just going to ask if you've got any reflections on that in an earlier question, and then we'll open it up to the audience.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, going back to the, the challenge of the affordability, it is a very difficult time to try and get clients to invest under the current economic situation. And also, we don't have a crystal ball right now to know how it's all going to pan out. We're only getting the data in from returning to the office. But I think, what we do know is the questions changing from, we think we know what we're doing in the office, and now we're asking, why are we in the office and how does it make us feel? So we sort of flip the question back and say, you need to actually invest in your workforce, about your existing and your emerging workforce, and we can highlight all the principles of smarter working and the benefits of that. But also, just to take another flip side on it, we can, going back to what I was talking about earlier, we can do feasibility studies for them, reducing their occupancy rates when their leases come up, and that will save them a lot of money. by up to 50, from up to a lot of space by up to 50%, and then sort of sell to them that you could reinvest some of that saving into investing in the workplace now, because it's going to have a long-term benefit for you to sort of retain and attract that talent in a really competitive market. And as the workforce is changing, that's going to be even more important. They cannot just stay static and have the same offices, because it will be just a brain drain out of the organizations.
Well, thank you. Right, I'm going to throw you to the lions now, I'm afraid. So we're going to start taking some questions from the audience. So I've got a first question from Michelle, and she's asked, how do you find a balance between personalisation and reduced desk ratios with hot desk neighbourhoods? So I suppose it's how do you enable people, I suppose, with those auxiliary spaces that they might need to access if they can't access a desk that might be their initial preference? How do you get the balance right for people? Pam?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Michelle, great question. It comes up time and time again, I have to say. We in DIO have moved away from what you would call neighbourhoods. We consider that to be second generation smarter working now, but we do recognise that there is a balance to be struck when people need to work together in certain areas. So we've moved away from individual sort of teams, a sort of cliquey way of working, to neighbourhoods. And now what we've done, we're very lucky, I grant that, we're in a new building, so we've got, floor plates on 3 floors. We've been able to create what we call mini cities. So, for example, on the next floor up, we've made that a sort of delivery arm city. So people who work in major projects and programmes, and also in maintenance, and also in utilities, they are our delivery arms of the business, and they're all on that middle floor of the building. So, wherever you are, even if you can't necessarily find, a hot desk or a place to drop down with your individual team, there is a mini city around there. So you're still within earshot or eyeshot of your colleagues that you might need to work with. And on the ground floor, we call that the enabling arms section. So you'll find finance and commercial and my team in IT all working in that mini city, but they're able to move around and not notice the difference between sitting in their own sort of wider teams in IT than working with finance and colleagues. And we find that that's helping with the network. That, and then when you overlay that with, conversations that Aiden and Stuart drew attention to earlier around those, water cooler moments, those coffee moments in the atrium alongside Costa, they foster that discussion, and staff will walk back into together with their coffee and then sit down together and carry on that conversation. So that has been quite useful for us, moving away from neighbourhoods and having this concept of mini cities. So I don't know if that's helpful, Michelle, but that's how we've viewed that here in DIO.
And I think that's really a good answer. And I think just to add to that, Michelle, from the GPA's point of view, is, when we're working with hubs and with the guide, we have departments sharing floor space. So personalization is actually, it's a really fine balance. When I think of personalization, I think of actually on floor level, not on team level. So it has to have a cohesive design across the floor. And we often have clients saying, well, we want to personalize our home zone. And I'm saying to them, well, if everyone on this floor all have a different home zone feel, it's gonna look awful. So it's about, being honest with the teams, that personalization on home zone level you have to be very careful to get the fine balance, otherwise it just doesn't come together. So it's more about floor level, having a personalization for the local area, or the floor level, or the activity, but not on team level.
Yeah, we're on the same page, Aiden, aren't we? And we've got to avoid nesting at all costs. Yeah,
absolutely.
I was going to think our journey is slightly I remember about 15 years ago, dictates going out about personalization of desks, because the whole model was you can move into any desks, and so the whole idea was you could have a building with any desk you could go and work at. But in reality, it didn't quite work like that with 4,000 people. People quite like the idea, Pam and Aiden, of whether it's mini cities or teams. So areas that do similar things are in similar areas. So, they want to be with the people that they deal with, and that works really, really well. And I think actually over the years, as we've put more tech around on desks, actually it has become, we've put chairs which are rather than the old chairs we bought new chairs which are fully adjustable. So suddenly that means you don't need to wheel all the chairs around. We had like there used to be, you know, the field of chairs against the wall that, you know, people put and what was it, the little container things at the side, the little things where you put all the personal belongings in,
pedestals,
the pedestal block. And over time, I think with COVID, people have sort of moved away from that, and I look around the building now and I don't see lots of personalization everywhere. I think our culture has probably moved on a lot more from that to actually, it's all the tech. You can't do much on the desk now because there's so much on it. But I think we have moved on that journey, and people are less inclined to do that. And especially with Manchester, where we're following your model, Aiden, with the hubs, actually you don't need to. It's like you've got other places that you can make your statement if you want to.
So I'm just going to go on to the next question that we got from the audience, which links in really nicely to that, Dave, when you talk about our culture, because Paul's asked a question around that he's experiencing lots of senior staff requesting, almost going back to old ways of working, individual private offices because of their ad hoc private telephone calls and meetings that they need to take place. How have you tackled your senior leadership buying into not just not having an office, but also recognising the value of a city, maybe, Pam? So maybe if I could get Dave, you just address it, and then Pam, you can come in on your city point.
Okay, I think going into the new building, I think actually we've gone past the office stage where people have individual offices. Even our Director Jeremy sits in an open plan area, and people can just wander in and work at desks. Obviously, you can't sit at his desk, but it isn't in an office. It's in an enclosed area, but it isn't in an office, and none of the DGs have that. So actually, none of the directors either. So we I don't think we're going to go back to a private. We just couldn't do it. So for us, we've gone past that absolutely. If they want to go and have a private call, there's meeting rooms and there's a next door, so they can do that there.
Pam.
Yeah, certainly. Paul, it's a very valid question and it will come up all the time. We get our seniors to role model, to lead by example. If generals can do it on floor plates in main building at the head of defence with very junior servicemen, then we can do it as civilians in our offices. The chief executive 3-star level leads by example. So we have glass pods. So they're like meeting rooms at the end. We've got lots and lots of different types of design spaces, but we have collaborative meeting rooms at the end of each floor plate. And they have a wall behind them and they have glass on 2 sides. And when the chief executive is in, which is usually 2 days a week, he will ask if at least one of those days he can use that glass pod himself. When he's got real business he needs to conduct with, say, the Secretary of State for Defence, those conversations cannot be held on the open floor plate, then he goes in there. And we just know that the chief executive, and you'll see him, he's a football fan and he usually has his backpack and his little hat on when he walks through the building. There's no airs and graces about the guy at all. He walks through, he waves, he says hi, and he goes in that office. He tries not to spend all day in that office. So he'll come out and sit, on the desks in front and have a chat to people. He'll walk around and chat. But we respect the fact that some of his conversations are really at that high level. So he goes in there and has them. And if we know he's coming in and he just needs it, then we'll book it out on the booking system. We have a booking system and we have room sensors as part of our technology. So we'll just say the chief executive is in on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. So if please, we could just leave that space, people will be going in and out there and having conversations with him. And everybody accepts that. And you can always see him because it's glass fronted. He's in there and he will wave to you through the glass and come and have a chat with you over coffee. So, our senior leadership through the executive committee are leading by example in how they behave. Most of the time, 95% of the time, they're out on the floor plate with everybody else, just as they are in GCHQ with Dave.
Well, thank you for that. I've got one really quick last question that I'm going to put to Aiden and Charlotte, and this is around biophilia design principles in the workplace, recognising that's a huge benefit for lots of people's well-being. How have you looked to integrate those kind of principles within the designs that you've been rolling out?
So we have a healthy buildings guide, which again picks up on these principles of biophilic design, and we have targets for meeting a certain percentage of the floor or wall plate to be live planting. So all of our hubs, we make sure that we have very high levels of actual high planting. We do need to balance that and manage that again with neurodiversity, because for some neurodiverse users, they're triggered by certain smells of plants. So we always have to consider that and have a balanced approach across in our spaces, in our hubs, and also look at how we can integrate it into the design, the colours that we're using, the different materials that we're using timbers, etc. So all of that integrating within our design as we progress.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky in the GPA that we have this design guide, and we have the sort of the healthy buildings guide. And I don't work in capital projects. A lot of our clients, the funding isn't coming centrally for hubs. It's coming from the clients. So we found it a bit more difficult to sort of sell bioaffiliate to our clients, but I think we're getting there. We've come a long way in the last couple of years, and I think clients are beginning to put it in. But what I find is I don't want it to just be a box ticking exercise. We've got plants, tick. We've got collaborations place, tick. It's about actually really investing in the right quantity of plants to make a difference. And that will really help your look and feel as well. They look beautiful. They make you feel better. But a lot of our clients say, it's the first thing to go, unfortunately, when budgets are tight. So it's about, getting that message across to them, the benefits, and that's what we're trying to do. But I think I want to see even more planting than we have. You go to some of our competitors in the private sector, we work and talk, and they're just, stacked to the rafters with planting, and it's amazing. So
I'd recommend also trying to get backing of sustainability teams within your departments and organisations, because they can really help provide, it might be that there would be some additional funding, etc., or providing that backing as to why it's really important to get live planting within buildings.
Can I just pick up on one point that Charlotte made earlier, please? If that's all right. Charlotte, you talked about the mix of plants and neurodiverse. We've considered that as part of the diversity and inclusion networks. We've got a few plants, but they're quite small, on different desktops. But what we have done is taken advantage of the curtilage of the building. We've created a wellbeing garden through the atrium that people can see. It's got remembrance benches, it's got furniture, it's got fountains, it's got plants there that people identify with. It's got a tree that goes back 200 years that people can congregate around. To the rear of the building, we planted meadowgrass, 7 different types of seed that encourages bees and butterflies. So that's how we've addressed, where we can't address it internal to the building, we've done it externally. So, and we work very closely with our people to get those guides. It's evolving and developing. And we've had a bad winter, which hasn't helped. But yeah, that's how we're managing the aspect of too many plants inside the building, asthmatics and etc. You need to be factored in. I just wanted to.
Similarly, Pam, on ours, I think we've got a garden atrium in the centre where we've got green grass and we've got water and we've got other features. And we've also got a wildlife garden, which is outside, so people can sort of sit there and relax. There's a telephone box and a Banksy box, I think, and people, in the summer months, it's absolutely fab. But we also, if somebody's had unfortunately he wants to put a memory of somebody in here, we allow them to plant trees and plants in the grounds as well. So if you wander around the building, there's a bit of our old culture of there. So somebody's still got a place, even though they're not in the building anymore. So we've got trees which are, some are like 10 years, 15 years old now, and that is a nice bit for people just to remember that it's not just today; it's for the future as well.
Same, Dave. Yeah, same.
I'm going to have to draw us to a close. I'm sure we could talk about this for another 45 minutes, but thank you so much, Aiden, Charlotte, Pam and Dave, for all your insights and sharing your knowledge with everybody today. I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people to start exploring this within their own organisations. One thing for the people that are watching us, if you want to access the GPA Workplace Design Guide, I believe a link to that is going to be put into the chat. We're also requesting some feedback on this session, so if you've got some time to provide us some feedback on how you found it, it'll be great to get that feedback. We do have 2 more webinars being hosted later today. One by Bytes is hosting a session on what is the purpose of the office, which was something we touched on today, and Polly are hosting a session on the interoperable or state. So you can sign up for those in the reception area. And remember, you can always sign up to the conference on the 1st of March. So I will leave it there. Say thank you to you all and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.